All right, hello everybody, and welcome to round three here in LSR one, as we're looking to get underway here. As we do have our first couple of drivers coming out onto the circuit, as we do have a bit of a mix for you. Thank you, Viperize, for chiming in there. Did I name this group three? It should be named group one. What did I title this stream? Did I screw up? Hold on. That shouldn't say group. I'm okay. Yeah, group one, round three. Don't scare me like that, Z. But yeah, bit of a lighter group today as we head to Silverstone 4, round number 3. We should be seeing at least one more driver invited. One second. I will actually be attempting to invite one more. Is Owen saying hello? Should be seeing, again, a couple of others, but we're being led out by FR in this one. And so we'll have to see how this works out. Yeah, there is another join, I believe. But yeah, it is going to be the Mercedes making its way out. We'll actually go ahead and put it on full track map as well. But going to be mixed up setups here, as it does appear that we got a wet race. Though, again, just kind of going off of that weather graphic that I received from Viperize, and I believe that means it will be likely full wet tires. So we'll have to see exactly what happens. And we'll see if it's lighter rain and it's a bit more of a crossover point, or how exactly this all ends up panning out. But of course, FR getting us underway, get that run down into turn number 3 and 4, getting it slowed all the way down through this left-hander now, and out on to was the Hanger Straight, I believe. I don't know my Silverstone corner names by heart. Please don't sue me. Down into turn number 6. Of course, that long left followed by that long right-hander. Sorry, that was Wellington. Brooklands into left field, out onto the old pit straight, blasting out into Woodcut. Of course, going to get all the way up to about 7th gear. Into that run into Cops. You might see a mix of drivers taking 7th and 8th gear through this corner as the Mercedes makes its way, trying to utilize all that track out on the exit. And of course, into Maggots, Beckett's, and Chapel here. A little bit more challenging in this year's game. You're going to see a bunch of drivers potentially get a little bit understeer, especially in that race with the increased dirty air this year. And now we're out onto the Hanger Straight, blasting down towards Stowe Corner. Once again, getting ready to just dive on the brakes, get it stopped very nicely into that right-hander, and then into the final couple of corners, Vale, Club, and back onto the Hamilton Straight to end the lap. So it's going to be FR setting the benchmark here in dry conditions. So again, dry quality, wet race, 27-0 is the first benchmark here from FR as we get underway and emerge KDs. Immediately 26.830 to go ahead and top that lap time. Wessel on his outlap, so we'll keep an eye on him to improve. Kaname also getting underway. Mango looking to get a good lap in. Had a big step up in qualifying last week, so that was good to see from the Red Bull driver. Rompo on an outlap in what will be his second race. Rasta 27.5 through the first 2 sectors is pretty solid. See what much that can continue. Working his way now through Maggots and Beckett's. Again, I believe everybody is showing that they are all set here. Rasta 103.2 through 2 sectors, so tracking pretty well for the Salver. Now, luckily, we do get up to 18 drivers, so again, good to see there. Rasta into the final couple of corners now. Can he put anything towards the front of the field? Tom with a 26.7. He'll go up to provisional pole for Red Bull. Can Rasta do anything about it? No, he'll slide into 3rd, just behind Emerge for the time being. But still a very solid lap there from that Sauber. And you see a lot of traffic going on out on track right now. You can see a number of drivers really trying to get those tires lit up for laps. Here comes the Haas of Wessel through the final couple of corners now as he blasts through Stowe. course, his Haas teammate to Fight Me Now bot. Really the only driver to put the fight to Frozen last week. Of course, Frozen not in attendance today. But Wessel to the line, he'll go second fastest, so 26.808, so looking to be very close in the early parts of qualifying. And Kaname blast to the top, 26.287. Now, for the Alpine, that was runner-up last weekend. So that's a great lap from Kaname, but Mango going even quicker, 26.163 from him. And so the Red Bulls looking to make a bit of a comeback here. Kiziel, of course, back on the track here in LSR, so good to see him back. We'll stay on board with Rompo as Fight Me Now bot goes third quickest as he looks to continue some good momentum from everything pretty much up until his third and final stint of last week's race at Bahrain, where he just couldn't manage to make up enough time. Rompo Strat 26.303 as the Mercedes now looks to get himself into the picture here in qualifying. Again, drivers looking very competitive at this stage. That was MacT popping up with a purple Sector 1, so we'll keep an eye on the Ferrari as he continues on this lap. And we'll jump on board with Viperize as well, as he makes his way through Sector 2. I believe it's a Haas behind him who is out of fuel, potentially. Yes, I believe it is the Haas behind him who is out of fuel. So Viperize making his way along the back side of the track now, and he's actually going to invalidate, so we'll stay on board. Actually, he's going to back off here, so we won't get a super representative lap time here. MacT, though, showing up as a purple in Sector 2. So MacT's Ferrari is showing some good pace here. I believe that's Rosicic. I believe that's FR, apologies, sliding into 9th. Here comes MacT now out of the final couple of corners. He'll push to the line. Can MacT take away provisional pole? He cannot. By 1,000th of a second, Mango just about holds on to provisional pole here with those first runs. And so it is incredibly tight in this one. See, a bunch of those, the top 5, all realistically, with a very good shot at provisional pole. See FR diving off the circuit there as he, I think, looks to get out of the way. We got Crazy Riatudo in that Williams, potential, not with a super competitive first push lap. Viperize as well. Going again here. Actually, no, his ERS seems to be off as well. So if you'll excuse me, I will go ahead and attempt to... I'll send an extra invite to one of the drivers that we are missing. If I can find him, that is. There he is, K7. So K7 looking to make a potential debut here. Of course, 9.5 minutes left to go in qualifying, so see if he gets in. Of course, blasting through Sector 3. It is still Mango with just that very ever so slight edge for provisional pole. Crazy Riatudo looks like he'll go again. So we'll see if the Williams can improve from that lap time. FR going to dive into the pits as well, and nobody really on a push lap as it stands. Fight Me Now bot working his way back in pits. MacT, of course, diving into the pits there as well. But I kind of had like a couple of thoughts prepared for if it looked like we were going to be getting a dry race today here at Silverstone, but it seems that that is not what we are getting. So full wet is going to be a very different outlook here as we look to dive in. There was Wingish joining, who I don't think I invited, so hopefully, again, looking to keep it clean here, but of course Wingish has raced here in LSR before. So certainly it will be interesting to see him back in it. Of course, 8 minutes left to go here in qualifying. Again, a bunch of drivers still waiting to get laps on the board. We'll stay on board here, I believe, with Jordan 2 Wavy as he makes his way through the first sector. Of course, he'll be blasting now down towards Cop's Corner. So seemingly pretty comfortable from the Aston Martin. Of course, going to want to bring it all the way to the inside and holding on to that pretty comfortably. Of course, attacking that curb on the inside a little bit. And attacking that inside curb there at Cops can be very dangerous depending on what you've gone with setup. I feel like want to be a little bit off it typically. Here comes Jordan into the final sector. 103.4. Again, showing up as purple down there at the bottom of in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. So we'll see exactly how that comes up. I believe that's VLX Red sliding up into P7, so that's a solid lap from him. Jordan, though, making his way through the final couple of corners. As up to 19 drivers we go. Jordan to the line, 27.190, so the slowest lap time so far from the Aston Martin. I think just not able to quite piece everything together, potentially in that final sector. 28.4 as well. We'll jump on board with Kaname as he continues to push. Of course, he's running down into comps now, so let's see if he is up on his delta at all through 2 sectors. Hayden, I would invite you, however, we are, at this point, very close to max capacity, which is the only reason I will hold off on that for the time being. Here comes Kaname, though, coming through that Sector 2 timing marker. Has he improved? He has matched his time through 2 sectors, so he's going to have to pull out something a little bit extra in this final sector if he wants to try and steal provisional pole, which could be very, very important in what could become a very tricky race. He's in wet conditions. Kaname now making his way through the final corners onto the pit straight. Can Kaname find anything in the final sector? He cannot. He'll stay at that 26.2 for the time being. Tom as well, down a second through that first sector. So probably a little bit of a mistake, a little bit of a spin there. Mango, meanwhile, his teammate, is up on his lap time, even if only slightly, would still extend that advantage up at the front. Under 6 minutes left to go in qualifying. As that there's Wessel jumping up into third, so the Haas looking to make his presence known at the front of the field, and Mango has now found 3/10, so Mango on a mega lap here as the track, of course, continuing to evolve throughout this qualifying session, continuing to get quicker, but Mango's used a lot of battery. You can see that red light flashing on the back of the Red Bull, meaning he has used up all of that battery power, so is that going to hurt him at all in this final sector, especially as he tries to get on the power here through the final couple of corners? It'll lose a little bit of time, but still enough to go into the 25s. It's a 25.926 from X-Mango. Again, extending that gap from 1,000 to just that little bit bigger there. Give himself a little bit of breathing room. Here comes Kaname, though, who is on that cooldown lap there, which I kind of forgot about. Here comes Rompo to the line. He'll jump up into 4th as he climbs up the order slightly. B-Tom only 7th for the time being with the Aston Martin's first run. Can I invite K7? Yes, I can. Thank you for that, Stratton. As he should now be invited, and that would be 20. I'll find me now about working his way through Sector 2. Bot now making his way through this twisty second sector. Of course, getting out of the way of the Red Bull. Is he going to invalidate there? No, but I believe he'll back off and down a 10th and a half. Probably won't see any improvement. Jordan, though, slots up into 13th for Aston Martin, so looking to climb up the field. Actually, he'll dive into the pits here. And so that will be him. Him diving in to try and get a final lap here in qualifying. But a very quiet track with about 3.5 minutes left to go here. As I say that, first couple of drivers looking to make their ways out onto the circuit. So again, 3 minutes left to go. You can see some activity starting. There's a V-carb out. There's a Williams going out. It is going to be VLX the Red, though, leading out of the pits. Of course, you got the Sauber of Viper Eyes looking to make his way back. He should still have just enough time to get a final lap in. But quality going to be extra important in this one. As we look to continue here. Of course, Red currently sitting in 11th. Going to have to find about a 10th and a half to try and jump up the order. But it's still a pretty tight field spread in this one. Go ahead and pull up that leader graphic. Top 16 all within a second right now. as there is T-Bone has left the session, so that was why K7 was unable to join. But VLXD red, and as you can see, a whole bunch of cars now piling out of the pits. As there is K7, so we will have a full group of 20 drivers. As we look to get underway here, B-Tom rather upset. As B-Tom worried that he may not get a lap in. He's only just been released. So VLXD Red going to be the first driver to get final lap started as we creep under a minute 40 seconds. Still a couple of chances for some of those drivers just coming out of the pits to get final laps in. But Red going to lead us out in that very nice looking livery. So into turn number 3 now. Of course, traction here out of turn number 4 and 5. Very important. You really want to try to keep it tight as you blast out through Aintree. Of course, DRS is going to open up here for the V-Car. I'm going to be using a good bit of battery as you head down the Wellington Straight. And across that first sector timing marker, BLXD Red down a tenth and a half. So not a great first chunk there from him. Ozan, meanwhile, will jump to down there 18th. Wasn't quite quick enough to be able to see exactly what his delta is. You can see the track very busy right now, and a bunch of drivers going to be working to try and get a final lap in. As VLXD Red through cops now, will traffic play a factor? It played a massive factor at Coda. As on a drying track, a bunch of drivers had to scatter out of the way to try to get final laps in. We're seeing a yellow flag in Sector 3, and look at all the traffic as you get into Vale and Club. This could be a huge factor here as VLXD Red 3/10 down as everybody trying to line up final laps and see everybody going very slowly as everybody just trying to create space, trying to get laps in. Everybody's scattering here. And I think the big question is how much time is there left on the clock? There is 15 seconds. Viper is going to be very close to the Haas out in front, and it's going to be a number of drivers who are going to be put off by that. And it should be about only a couple of seconds left. We'll tell when K7, that checker flag comes up. Qualifying is now over. So that is qualifying for Ozan, for K7, for Jordan, and for Red. They will not improve. Mac T, though, got some nice clear air. His teammate of Emerge KD's just up the road, so we'll jump up to him. He's found an improvement through 2 sectors. Can he potentially clean up a final sector to see himself jump further up into that top 10 as here comes Emerge through the final corner now. Has he managed to pull anything out? He'll pull up a 10th, but it's still only good enough for P9. Got the Mercedes of FR working his way to the line. He's up about 6/10, so he's on for a monster final lap compared to his earlier ones, but only going to gain 4/10. That's still enough to put him up into the top 10. We got one of the Alpines coming to the line, and then it is going to be, that's Kaname. He'll go 4th. Can Mac T potentially challenge Mango for pole here at Silverstone? He'll come to the line. It's not quite good enough. Here comes Wessel now out of the final corner. Does he have anything to say about Mango's final lap time? He will not. He will start no better than 3rd. Here comes Rasta now to the line. That lap time good enough for 12th. And, of course, here comes a chain of a bunch of cars. You got the McLaren of Spinella King. He'll start 12th. You got a car spun on the infield there. You got an Alpine, that second Alpine coming to the line of Wingish. He won't improve, but the Mercedes of Rompa was 3rd. Kiziel steals pole. He'll jump up to the top of the order. Mango, meanwhile, has invalidated. And I don't know if anybody else has a lap on the board. So Kiziel, with the final valid lap of qualifying, steals pole here for McLaren at Silverstone with a great lap. 25.775 is your pole time. And it goes to the man serving in reserve here. Yeah, Kiziel picking up that bonus point. And so we'll move into the race, which is going to be very interesting. But of course, a very tight field. Down to 14th and even further separated. Down to 14th, separated by less than a second. 1.2 back down to Wingish. And of course, it's going to be interesting to watch the rest of the drivers here. As, seeing a bunch of different drivers towards the top of the field. But of course, getting into a tricky part of this session. as we'll now move to a final lap. And it's very heavy rain in this one. As you can see, the rain absolutely pouring down here. So it's almost certainly going to be full wet tires in this one, as there will be some time before we get underway, as it's looking like heavy rain for the entire race for some of the chat going on in Group 1 chat. Again, still under a brief pause. So we'll see how many drivers took more qualifying setups. Imagine a bunch of setups going to be big trouble in the race. Again, hoping to see enough completions here. We do have our first wet racing laps here in Group 1 this season. Of course, we saw wet qualifying at Circuit of the Americas. But it's going to be the first time in anger. But it's going to be 26 laps, if I'm not mistaken. Probably looking at everybody still making a stop, especially with how tire wear has been typically in this game. It's going to be an interesting watch as we look to figure out here, if you'll excuse me, I'm just preparing to get the ready up command ready. All right, and we should be under 30 seconds before we get ready to go, as a bunch of drivers seemingly running some very low downforce setups. Kiziel and Mango among them. But we'll see if that clean air starting towards the front may work to their advantage. Of course, Maggots and Beckett's going to be an extreme challenge in this one. That's 5 seconds per Viperize. Thank you for that heads up. And we are on the grid. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 lights. And we are underway here in Silverstone. Once again, a McLaren and a Red Bull, 1-2 on the grid, as it seems to be very tentative getaways for a lot of our drivers. Kiziel, though, with a very nice getaway, so he'll pull out into the lead. You can see the Aston Martin there getting pushed wide in the background. There's a bunch of drivers scattering all over the circuit. Wingish has already DNF'd somehow. I assume that's a manual retirement, but I don't know where Wingish is. But Kiziel working out here on lap 1. You can see a whole bunch of carnage as everybody really struggling in these wet conditions. You can see, I think, a little bit of debris flying all over the place. B-Tom in 6th being put under pressure by Wessel. But Kiziel in the lead, and Mango going to go into the back of Kiziel. That's actually a good work from Kiziel to hold on to that. Rompo into the back of Mango as well. And you see a whole bunch of drivers really trying to figure out exactly what they can do in some of these wet conditions. And I'm surprised we haven't seen a bigger incident yet, as there goes the Ferrari, there goes Spinalla and Emerge KDs off the tracks. I think Spinalla King just getting a little bit loose there, just unable to find any traction. As contact there again, that's going to lead Spinalla King even further off the track. But drivers somehow managing to keep it out of the wall. Rompa was up into 2nd. He managed to find an overtake on Mango there. So there is your predicted race strategies. As here early on lap number 1, here comes Rompo looking to the outside of Kiziel. Can the Mercedes potentially make a move for the lead? Kiziel, though, with enough speed down the straight to manage to hold on. Looking for a bit of a switchback to the inside from Rompo, though, who potentially carrying a little bit more downforce will take the lead here at the end of lap 1, as the Mercedes, I think, taking advantage of some of that better race pace. As Wessel, I believe, has gone round, has had an incident. Wessel actually going for intermediates here. That's something that I didn't consider, is how many drivers potentially looked at the intermediates. Bit of a wiggle there, you can see, from Rasta, as K7 going to dive into the pits and retire. So that's 2 drivers now out of this race. But I guess that's an important thing that wasn't considered, was how many drivers would go for wets or inters. as we got a good mix. B-Tom, though, looking to get up into 5th, as I think those inters starting to get up to temperature. As the inter's a very strong tire in this game, I'm definitely surprised that drivers opted for that compound. Finding Albot also in that whole thing dropped down 18th, which is a bit of a surprise. But Rompo is absolutely flying early. Viperize saying he's struggling with visibility, which I suppose is rather realistic. But lap number 2 here, and Rompo are pulling away very quickly. They seem to be very prepared with a wet weather setup. As we head through Cops, he's up 2 seconds now, so he's pushing incredibly hard, or has a very good setup here. As we make our way through Maggots and Beckett's for the second time. Of course, Kiziel and Mango, again, with those more straight line speed setups, going to be a big cork in a bottle here for everyone behind. Because, of course, without DRS and with all that dirty air, could see a bunch of, kind of chaos start to happen behind as the likes of MacT try to find their way through. Mango, big slide there. Manages to hold on, and I think almost goes into the back of Kiziel again. We got Rasta and Wessel battling away as Rasta looks to go around the outside. Can he get it done through the final corner as Rompo sets a fast lap of the race of 45.7 here as contact between the Sauber and the Haas as they look to try and keep it side by side, just that understeer in the wet, and that's not going to happen. It's going to allow FR to try to jump up the order. He won't quite make it happen, though, as he'll slide back into 12th. It does seem to be a little bit jumpy, so hopefully FR can keep it together. A bunch of jostling positions further up the field. Kaname and Tom looking to battle as there's the Alpine looking to the inside on that set of Anders. Tom going to get pushed rather wide there. You can see the Ferrari of MacT further up the order, trying to get some moves done. Looked to be almost 3 wide there for a second, as VLXD Red now looking to follow Kaname through. Going to try to stick it around the outside of the Red Bull now. As you can see, Jordan as well, looking to potentially try and get moves done, as 2 packs of 4 starting to form, and absolutely going at it here. Tom manages to hold on to 7th, though, as Red not able to get the greatest exit, and is it going to be, as it looked like it briefly, could be side-by-side through Cops. Behind between Red and Jordan, but not able to get it done. MacT, first recipient of a 3-second time penalty. He's now side-by-side with B-Tom into Maggots and Beckett's. B-Tom, though, going to be the one to back out, being on the inside there, as I think B-Tom and MacT potentially taking those higher downforce setups, just struggling to find a way through, and that's allowed that battle for 7th to catch up very comfortably. As here comes Mango now. Is he going to be potentially looking for a move on Kiziel, trying to set up the outside, going to try to be braver on the brakes. He'll go side by side with the McLaren out in front. This will allow Rompo to just start to pull away here up at the front as everybody behind really struggling. You can see the Aston Martin of B-Tom looking to switch outside on MacT. Is he going to get that move done? He will. So now it'll be B-Tom's job to go chasing after Mango, unless Mac looks to get that move done back up the inside, as he'll go side by side with B-Tom, though it doesn't seem quite able to get that pass done. And B-Tom now up into 4th and is going to be the one trying to overtake Kiziel and Mango. But been absolute chaos here early in this race. Tom now having to defend, actually attack Kaname here, looking to go around the outside there at turn 2, not able to get it done. We'll see if he can manage to get anything done here down the straight. Of course, straight line speed going to be very important defensively here. Windows left because of rain. Okay. Well, then he'll get a DNS. But yeah, Tom looking to get that done. You can see Jordan into the back of Red, as again, just drivers really struggling to keep it just going in the right direction. And again, Kiziel and Mango just managing to be that bit of a cork there. As those lower downforce setups actually fairly good for defending in the wet. Mango, though, going to get a little bit outside onto the curbs there on the exit of Cops. That's going to allow B-Tom to close up, and is this going to be an opportunity for the Aston Martin, who does seem to be making those inters work fairly comfortably? It's not going to open up an opportunity as Mango gets on the curb again. Very loose is the Red Bull. There's B-Tom going to the inside. As here comes the Aston Martin. Is he going to finally make the move? Mango going to go defensive. B-Tom, though, going to be braver on the brakes. Going to force Mango to the outside, to the long way round. B-Tom manages to get that move done. And it's the Aston Martin getting up a spot and being the first driver to overtake Mango or Kiziel, since Rompo on lap 1, who has just been able to pull away with that clean air, and Beatom now all over the back of Kiziel. You can see them Ferrari and Alpine of Kaname and Makti going at it in the background. As we make our way through the first couple of corners, Crazy Riatudo with a mistake there early on in the lap. Kiziel, you can see sliding now as we get on the brakes into turn number 2. And again, is this going to now open up that opportunity for Beatom? Is he going to have now some clean air to try and finally start to put some laps together that may put Rompo a little bit under threat, who's just really driving on his own? There, Beatom with a late dive to the inside. Can he get it done? Going to be a little bit slower through the first part of the exit there. And again, you can see Beatom wanted to use so much more speed in that Aston Martin, specifically through those corners, as Jordan and Wessel swap spots. Well, going to Cops once again, and it's, again, just that straight line speed advantage of Kiziel just makes it so difficult for Beatom to find a way through. You can see just how much, more grip that Aston Martin has, especially compared to Mango's Red Bull behind, who's just kind of struggling to keep up a little bit. Of course, as we get into the corner, it's going to be slowed down due to Kiziel just having that little bit more top speed, I believe. But again, going to be an opportunity here for Beatom. As we head into Sector 3, Beatom looking to go around the outside this time. Going to be looking to maybe dive it late on the brakes. Going to have to tuck back in, though, as some good defending from Kiziel. The Beatom going to have a good exit there. It's going to be side-by-side through the final couple of corners, and there's the Aston Martin going to try to swing it all the way around the outside, and Beatom will slide up into second place now. So a good move from the Aston Martin, but as this race is just about over, how much, in terms of resources, does Beatom have at this stage? And how much is that gap going to start to come down, if at all? 9 seconds is the gap that Beatom has to make up now over the next 20 laps. As you see, a big train going on behind. Mango, of course, having to defend from Kaname. And I think another question, how quick are those inters going to continue to be throughout this race? You can see a bit of a drier line starting to form. Though I think it would hesitate to call it a dry line, as the rain coming down very hard. Kaname now, though, looking to get a move done on Mango, trying to potentially force him a little bit slower, but not able to utilize the grip of that Alpine to his advantage just yet. Mango, though, again, getting that little bit loose on the exit. We'll see how long he can manage to hold on. You can see, again, the Aston Martin of Jordan in the background looking to potentially try and get some moves done. As the Inter's definitely seeming like the quickest tire. It's going to be side-by-side here through Maggots and Beckett's. It's going to be very tight. As almost blocked in is Kaname. Mango, though, seems to be the one that has to back out. It's going to be two cars now for Kaname to try and get that move done, as he's now tucked in under the rear wing of Kiziel. So here he comes. He's going to tuck to the outside as Kiziel going defensive here. It's going to be attempted switchback from Kaname. He's going to get all the way up on the curb, somehow manages to make some room and keep it out of Kiziel's side pod. They're going to remain side-by-side now through the final couple of corners, as Rompo sets a new fast lap of the race. It's going to be 3 wide here, as Mango looking to get the move done. Beatom is the one with the new fast lap of the race. Kiziel and Mango going to go side-by-side, and it's Kiziel who gets squeezed out into the gravel this time, and it's Kaname up into second. Beatom is now closing that gap with some free air, as they're not showing up. It's been a pretty chaotic start to this race. Rompo took the lead on lap 1 after starting third. I think just having a much better wet weather setup than either Mango or Kiziel, who started second and first respectively. But Beatom and Kaname have really started to fly here on intermediates. They just about got past Mango and Kiziel, who held up the pack behind for quite a while. But Beatom now starting to close that gap to the Mercedes ahead very quickly. Yellow flags behind. That is for FR, who has had an incident. So FR is going to go around. But yeah, again, Rompo has just been really in a race of his own. Again, you can see how much that gap's starting to open up now. Mango, of course, with a little bit of clean air. He'll have Kiziel behind to defend a little bit. So if he can manage to maybe not keep up with Kaname and Beatom, as those Inters definitely seem to be a bit of the stronger tire right now. Especially, again, as these cars continue to go around, I think you can see a bit more of a Inter-strong line continue to form here. And the Inters are, again, very, very strong in this year's game. no matter what the weather condition is. And again, you can see, especially coming down this straight, just how those conditions are. And I think Mango taking advantage now as Kiziel, I think, was struggling to defend from the likes of Kaname. Again, it doesn't appear that the McLaren has picked up any damage, but now he's got Macti and Wessel right on his rear wing. And so Mango, with potentially a little bit of breathing room, has the opportunity to pull away. But Beatom starting to flex his muscle now. Kaname, though, doing much of the same. As the gap, 6.5 and 3 seconds cars ahead. Emerge KDs will dive in the pits and retire. So that is another retirement from this race. So Emerge not thinking that the race is worth continuing. Wessel, though, can he find the move there on MacT in that first corner? You can see the Haas getting very loose here. But again, trying to utilize those inters. He now has the inside. Yeah, the inters, definitely the strong tire here. As Wessel finding his way through. So that's another car that could now be putting Kiziel under pressure. As again, yeah, you can see Kiziel very much seemingly with a car for the dry setup, because even compared to Mango, he's losing a rather significant amount of time. We'll run into cops once again, though. And again, you can look and see just how dry that line is starting to look. Again, I'm sure it doesn't feel that way for a bunch of our drivers. You can still see lots of water off of that racing line. We'll head into Maggots and Beckett's, and again, you can see slowing down a bunch and just really looking to try to maximize that exit. We'll continue to run here, and for the first time in this race, we'll jump up to our leader of Rompo. Well, again, has just been driving very comfortably. I think just been minimizing mistakes. But I think for the first time in this race, he'll start to see that green Aston Martin starting to bear down on him here on lap 8. And you can see a bit of a slide there as Rompo, I think, continues to just try and push the pace a little bit. We are still probably looking at a bit of a two-stop race. It does seem like the rain has lightened up a little bit. You can see a couple of drivers being the first to dive into the pits. I believe that's Tom diving in the pits first. You got a couple early drivers doing that. Wessel with a nice move there. Can he continue to hold on from Kiziel, who looked to have a good run there out of the final corner? He will not. And so Wessel now with some clear air. But a bunch of drivers diving in the pits. Rasta, Tom, Spinala King all diving in the pits. And I believe this may all be for intermediate tires. As Tom, Rasta, and Spinala, yes, all going for a early stop to intermediate tires, as I believe definitely close to that crossover point. As Riatudo picks up a time penalty for track limit. So are we now getting into the pit stop bays here? Specifically for the wet tire runners. Big slide there from B-Tom. Which I guess something else to consider will be tire temps. Fight Me Now bot, though, utilizing those inters. He'll get ahead of Red as he looks to climb up the order. But Mango running comfortably. Kaname still closing on Beaton, though. But Rompo potentially starting to struggle here. As you can see, again, you can see a lot more of that tarmac. It's a lot less wet. Beaton, you can see starting to slide there a little bit. So is there potential overheating starting to go on with these wet weather tires? As we'll make our way through the final corners, 2 seconds is the gap. Let's see, a bit of sliding there. B-Tom, again, setting a new fast lap of the race, and Kaname will top that. Mango actually going to dive into the pits here. And MacT will follow. So we're going to have a couple of drivers out in the pits. It's going to be inters for the Ferrari of MacT. Will it be the same for Mango? That it will. Again, solid stop there for the Red Bull team as Mango going to be getting back underway. So going to be interesting to see how much of an undercut he can get. But B-Tom now closing within a second. Rasta picks up a 3 seconds for time limit. Track limits. Jordan and Red also diving into the pits. So again, a bunch of drivers thinking now is, especially those on wets, thinking that now is the time to get off that set. And are they thinking now, potentially, taking those inters to the end of the race? But B-Tom closing very rapidly, now within half a second of Rompo up ahead. So Rompo, who's led since the end of lap 1, was able to open up a very big gap on some of the cars behind, thanks to really Kiziel and Mango just being a bit of a thorn in everybody's side. Comes into Magnus Beckett's now, and the multi-time LSR Group 1 champion now breathing down his neck, and B-Tom's going to want to make sure to dispatch Rompo rather quickly here. as we come down the hangar straight, closing within 2/10, within a tenth and a half. Will B-Tom try and go to the inside here? He'll be very brave on the brakes to get that move done on Rumpo. He'll slide up the inside very comfortably, and B-Tom takes the lead here. Rumpo will take the key there to dive into the pits, and I imagine that will be for a set of intermediate compound tires. But B-Tom will take the lead here. Of course, B-Tom not clear of the danger either. He's got Kaname now closing in on him as Alpine look to continue their Constructors' Championship fights. Of course, Frozen not in attendance today. Rompo going to slap on the inters, and he'll start to make his way out of the pits. Definitely going to be interesting to see what his gap behind to Mango is. But nobody else seemingly following him in. Kiziel opting to stay out, as is Fight Me Now bot, Wessel. So Rompo now coming out on that set of inters. FR going to stay out as well on that set of wets. And then Mango making his way out. Tom JM actually setting the new fastest lap of the race at 39.843. So Inter's definitely the quickest tire here. See, that got from Mango up to Rompo sitting at about 8 seconds. So I think those Inter's definitely proven to be rather strong here. Yellow flag in Sector 3. That is for a Sauber that I believe someone on the pit straight. That is Viperize who picked up a big chunk of damage. That's the front wing gone. Is Viperize's race. I think going from bad to worse here. But jumping back up to this lead fight, Konami, you can see closing in on B-Tom pretty rapidly here. And I'd imagine just with that gap to behind Arampo, both these cars are going to have to pit certainly once. We'll see how long they attempt to extend this intermediate tire stint, though, as both drivers opt in to stay out. Wessel having a very nice race on debut, running comfortably in third. Of course, going to be in a very good position here. So we'll see what the Haas can do. Kaname, though, setting a new fast lap of the race. Kiziel, though, going to be a driver to watch here. Is this going to finally be the time? It's not. The McLaren, again, going to continue to stay out. So again, potentially struggling a little bit on those wets. I think the big issue for Kiziel right now is those wets are just not very fast. And so is he trying to potentially extend this to a one-stop, trying to stave off any potential puncture issues by trying to extend this maybe another lap or two? But you can see Mango closing very rapidly on the Mercedes of FR. The lead battle as well, down to within a second. So we'll jump up to that. Ozan going to retire in the pits as well, so he believes his race are over. Ferrari performing like IRL. Yeah, I think Emerge unhappy with this race. Mac T, though, I think is in a decent position on those intermediate tires. You can see battle for the lead separated by 1.3 seconds. Ozan has now left the session. Viper is going to do the same. So 5 retirements already, all manual by lap 12. See, 1.2 seconds in it. Rompo now up to the back of Kiziel. So with that being the closest battle on track, we'll jump to that briefly as the Mercedes trying to hunt down the McLaren. And so much more speed from Rompo there through comps. You can see him, I think, struggling to keep that car under control as he had to back out into Magnussen. Back at Rompo. Strat moves up into P5. Meanwhile, in the battle for the lead, Konami, again, closing within half a second now, but going to be struggling a little bit from some of that dirty air. So that's going to have to be a consideration as we come to the line to start lap number 13. So B-Tom running fairly comfortably. Of course, the yellow flags are now gone. Mango as well, dispatching the Mercedes of FR. So now he has the opportunity to go chasing after potentially Kiziel and or Rompo. As Tom JM gets ahead of FR with a nice little move there. As both Red Bulls showing some solid pace right now. Again, I think just, the goal right now, put yourself in the best position possible. Especially as the leaders could potentially start coming to blows here. Lap 13 of 26. VLXC Red will dive in the pits. He'll retire as well. So again, a bunch of drivers just thinking the race is not worth continuing as conditions continue to become more and more challenging. Reatudo going to dive into the pits, jump off a wet compounded tire. B-Tom and Konami, though, continuing to fight here. So into Maggots and Beckett's as we hit the halfway point. You also have Mac T in the Ferrari closing down on FR. He'll look to the inside. Can he get this move done? Under braking, he will. We'll jump up back to the lead battle now. And does Kaname have enough straight line speed to potentially bring the fight to B-Tom? He will not here. He'll still be stuck a little bit behind. And we'll push on here. So is this the time now for B-Tom and Kaname to consider driving the pits? Both drivers, again, continuing to stay out here. So both drivers fairly comfortable on the intermediate compound. Wessel will continue to stay out as well, which is a little bit surprising. I'm not sure if drivers holding out for potential safety cars or if they think that their setups are going to hold on to tires that well. Find Me Nowbot opts to stay out as well. But Rompo continuing to push. Mango, I think, continuing to try and inch that gap a little bit closer to the cars ahead. You can see him on those intermediates, closing down Kiziel rather quickly. But the pack, even not considering the retirements, has opened up a good bit. There's Mac T around the outside of FR. FR, another driver who was, I think, a bit surprisingly not pitted yet. Mango as well. Fastest driver on the circuit right now on that intermediate compound. So Mango's looking to throw some laps down as he's now caught Kiziel. So I think since the race started in full wet conditions, is there any chance that they can make it to the end? That I don't know. The only race that I've done in wet conditions was it was a very odd Imola race where it was 50% Imola, but it was kind of in the crossover between Inter and Dry. So it was kind of in that spot as Mango. You can see so much more grip. And on traction, is he going to get Kiziel here? He'll deploy overtake, and the Red Bull comfortably through. But I'd imagine that there's not going to be an opportunity as the battle fleet, again, continue to stay very tight here. Though both drivers looking to continue on. So I'm not sure if they're getting... So, maybe there's messaging that, you can continue, on. And maybe just with the level of rain, it's keeping those tires in a comfortable spot. And if you can manage those tires very well, you can take it the entirety of the race. FR has gone round. FR has a puncture. FR has a puncture on the wet tire. And I think there is your answer to if drivers can go to the end of this race, is FR in the Mercedes with a rear left puncture here on lap number 14. As he's now the driver that's had it go wrong. Kiziel gonna dive into the pits finally. But I think that is gonna be your point that, there is gonna have to be stops. Those wets not gonna go the whole race. Rostachich gonna dive into the pits and retire. So many drivers manually retiring from this race. I imagine FR will follow, and that'll leave us with 13 drivers remaining. Again, B-Tom continues to hold the lead here. But just going to continue to push on. It's lap 15. I think certainly going to be in puncture risk very soon for some of these drivers. You can see the stricken Mercedes up ahead. Of course, with that rear left tire completely starting to delaminate. Of course, going to be getting shown blue flags, and he'll have to dive into the pits here. Well, the leaders take that as a key. The Alpine of Kaname will. So Kaname going to take the key of that Mercedes getting that puncture for himself to dive into the pits. FR going to get a pit lane speeding penalty there, but I think that's understandable. So Wessel will move up into second. Fight Me Nowbot continues to sail, so he'll slide up into third. And Rompo and Mango still in a very comfortable spot here. FR actually turning on the slicks, which I think is a big mistake there. I don't think we're certainly nowhere close to slicks, so I imagine that is a bit of a misinput there from the Mercedes. So I think we will probably see retire here shortly, because those tires certainly not going to work. You see that gap, opening up very quickly here is, those softs certainly going to not come up to temperature here. You can see him right on that complete wet patch, and he's going to go around here. So 12 drivers realistically still in it. Back from Kaname up to Rompo as well, sitting at 6.5 seconds. So Rompo, your net leader, for those who have stopped so far. And we'll see if Kaname can manage to start to bring some of that, to bring that gap down a little bit. As we'll push here, as again, FR diving out of the way. Going to be really struggling to try and get some of those tires up to temp. But 10 laps left to go here. Again, yellow flag, that will be, I'm going to imagine that a bunch of these yellow flag pop-ups are going to be for FR. Supposed to be dry at the end, but may take a safety car. That is good to know. So we'll have to keep in mind for if that rain stops. So is that the reason why so many of these drivers are staying out? Is that the reason B-Tom, Wessel, and Bot have all opted to stay out here? You see Wessel really starting to struggle here. Wessel as well has some front wing damage. You can see that the front left bit of his end plate is missing. And as Wessel looks to continue to defend, Mango again with another fast lap of the race. Mango continuing to pick up some speed here as the track just kind of continues to dry. Will Rompo make it and keep Kaname behind? I think that's the big question right now. I think Rompo can definitely make it to the end. I think Tom and Mango are going to be, again, more of that key as to exactly how this goes down. FR once again going to dive into the pits. So I imagine he's going to retire. Kiziel, though, with the fastest lap of the race. He looks to try and drag his way back into contention. But Bot, this is Bot, not Wessel, trying to hold cars behind. And you can see Kaname closing up very quickly as those inters can start to get up to temperature. He's, of course, got Mango trying to hunt him down. And there's Rompo through the exit of Cops able to get that move done on Bot. And through Magaton, Beckett's going to hold on to it. FR, of course, going to retire from the session, now being going to be about 2 laps down. He is out of this race. So that'll be that yellow flag in Sector 1. B-Tom, again, continuing to go here. Wessel finally going to dive into the pits here. He thinks that those inters not going to make it to the end. So what's going to be the tire choice here from the Haas? I think that's going to be the very important question here as the rain just continuing to lighten. Again, I think we're still a ways away from being in dry conditions, as his teammate of Fight Me Now Bot also going to follow him in. So what is the tire choice from Haas number 1? It's going to be inters on Wessel. Here comes Fight Me Now Bot down the pits as Rompo moves up into second. That'll be Kaname in third. Mango up into fourth. Fight Me Now Bot, meanwhile, going to be a little bit slower due to that double stack. Going to be inters on his car as well. So fresh inters for both Haas, as they'll now look to try and pull any sort of points out of this. They'll both be still in the top 10, though. Kaname now, I think with those fresh inters, really starting to show some of that pace. That gap to Mango continuing to open up here. That's what I'd imagine, Bernat, is that, B-Tom will try and go to the end here. He's good on fuel, so that's not a question of fuel. It's just going to be a question more of can those tires hold on. 15.5 seconds is the gap. So I think it's a matter of, as a big slide there from Rompo, so he's pushing very hard. Kaname continuing to push as well. You can see that gap to Mango starting to open up behind. He'll have to keep an eye out for Wessel closing behind. As fresh inters on the Haas, could that prove to be a difference maker in this one? Maxie and Tom, of course, going to be battling for likely the remainder of this race. The Red Bull and Ferrari go at it. Speed time, I think you can see tire saving big time, down over 1.5 seconds through about half a lap. So I think B-Tom going to continue to be in more and more danger here. Kaname continuing to close, though, on Rompo, down to within 1.5 seconds now. As the Alpine continue to push, you can see Mango sliding that Red Bull in the background. He's still certainly in full push at mode as well. But it's kind of that mid-stint going on right now. As Kaname looking to continue to close that gap. 13.6 seconds is the gap from Rompo up to B-Tom now. Kaname continuing to push here. See B-Tom continuing to just kind of race consistently here. Trying to do everything I can not to come to Eater's Curse another driver, but I think it's going to be very hairy here. It's going to be 7 laps to go. as we come across the line next time, for if you are doing math at home, or the start of 7 to go, I should clarify. Again, the battle for P2 going very hard. You can see just how much time B-Tom is saving specifically through cops. So we head into Maggots and Beckett's now. You can see, again, Rompo picking up loads of time here. Yeah, I think B-Tom doing everything he can to just try and nurse these tires home. Down to 12 seconds. I think Kaname trying to get a little bit of cooler water on those tires, as he'll continue to push now. But 12 seconds is going to be the gap that either Rompo and or Kaname will have to try and get down over these final 7 laps. So we've been green from lights to flag here at Silverstone. Again, all the drivers, manual retirements, 2 to 3 seconds per lap. It's going to be close. That it certainly will be. I think if you're B-Tom, you're okay giving up that about 2 seconds a lap right now, if it means that you have just a little bit more tire life towards the end. And you can see, again, weather starting to lighten up a little bit. As we jump on board with Rompo, you can see him starting to fight that car, as the Inter's potentially starting to, after about 9-10 laps of really hard pushing here, seemingly starting to scream out a little bit in pain. The gap starting to close up. Mac T, though, can Mac T finally get that move done on Tom? We'll jump back to that move as they'll go side by side in the braking zone. Tom, very brave under braking, but going to get a little bit crossed up, and that's going to allow Mac T up the inside. So Mac T slides up into 6th after a big ol' fight with Tom. Andy Maggots and Beckett's know that though now. And it does seem that B-Tom has started to pick up the pace a little bit. Though through Maggots and Beckett's, again, you can see B-Tom saving a lot of time. The gap now down to 11 seconds. As here comes Kaname looking to the outside of Rompo. Can the Alpine finally get the move done? He can, as they get into the braking zone here in Sector 3 at Stowe. And that's going to free up the Alpine on much fresher tires to go chasing after Rompo. Going to dive into the pits here. Rompo doesn't think those tires will last. Mango is going to follow. That's going to allow Wessel back up into a podium position. So big decisions from Rompo and Mango. Of course, those drivers doing a lot less tire saving. There was Tom in. There was Spinella King in. Could this be for slicks? I think is the interesting thing to consider. I don't think it will be. Spinella King going to get a 10-second pit lane. He'll retire in the pits. It's going to allow Mac T to get up into 5th. But going to be a big question now of can B-Tom hold on to these tires for a few more laps, as a bunch of drivers that were chasing him thinks that they will not last. And now they have an opportunity to go chasing after Mac T, after Jordan, and try and pick up a spot. As the Ferrari and Aston Martin, I think, just are going to try to hold on to their tires, though I'd imagine they're in a much better place. The gap behind, 9 seconds for the lead. Of course, Rompo going to be all over the back of Fight Me Now, but it's probably going to be a second for the Mercedes to try and get those tires lit up to get underway. Again, that gap continuing to come down. And yeah, B-Tom, I think it's just starting to throw a little bit of caution to the wind here. As again, you can see that gap coming down significantly less. As he'll push here. 8 seconds the gap as we cross the line. 5 laps to go now. And Kaname just continuing to try and close it down. Rompo will try to find his way past Fight Me Now, but he'll fight around the outside of the Haas. And that's Rompo looking to try and continue that pace. Jordan going to dive into the pits. Jordan doesn't think he'll make it to the finish. And so there's an Aston Martin in the pits for the second time. So that'll promote Rompo back up into 5th. Mango, of course, going to be picking up a spot as well. Gap up at the front now, 7 seconds. Again, drivers continue to push. I think Wessel definitely deserves an honorable mention. We haven't looked at the penalties is something that we definitely haven't looked at. But position change is something that we haven't looked up at either. And, a number of drivers with some solid races. I think Kaname being up 5 spots is very big. I think, obviously, Mango and Kiziel struggling a little bit from more quali-centric setups, but still should come away with some decent points. But still, lots of time left for something to happen. The gap now down to 6 seconds for the leader. There is B-Tom. As Kaname just looking to continue to try to hunt him down. And Kaname can push just with not exactly reckless abandon, considering the on-track conditions. But he can push much more aggressively than the man he is competing with for the win of this race. And of course, Wessel's going to be there to try and pick up the pieces when something happens. Mac T going to be trying to continue to hold on here. Will the Ferrari dive in the pits here? No, he'll continue to stay out, so he thinks his inters will last. So 4 laps to go now. And again, that gap just continues to just draw ever so closer. You can see B-Tom, I think, doing everything he can to keep those tires cool. Rompo picks up the bonus point now for fast lap of the race, and Mango will steal it away. How many times has the leader pitted? B-Tom has not boxed yet, which, of course, in these conditions, you don't need to do. It is wet weather, so B-Tom can opt to stay out. And I think he's doing a nice job of trying to just go offline, get some water onto the tires to cool them. But he's just losing too much time now. So yeah, B-Tom has been out since the beginning of this race. Again, you can see Kaname really starting to close the gap here, especially through Maggots and Beckett's. As Kaname just trying to hunt him down. Down to 3 seconds now as Kaname really starting to pick up speed here. And you can see, I think Kaname doing a lot of the same stuff B-Tom is, trying to keep as much life in those tires as possible, especially as the rain continues to get that little bit lighter here. As you can see, it continues, again, just that it's raining that little bit less and that little bit less over time, which is not going to exactly work to B-Tom's advantage here. See a bit of a wiggle there from Kaname as we come across the line. 3 laps left to go, and the gap under 3 seconds for the lead. Down to 2.5, and Kaname pushing very hard here. Of course, Mango and Fight Me Now bot going to come to blows. Of course, both drivers going to be looking to stay ahead of Kiziel at the line. As there's B-Tom now. Is he going to start to throw caution to the wind? Or his tires just at the point where that's not an option? I think he's B-Tom picking up so much time there. Picking up 6/10. Even just through Sector 1 now. As we get into Brooklands and Luffield. Run down into Cops for the 3rd time towards the end. And you can see B-Tom and just doing everything he can to try and stay off of those curbs. They got now down to 2 seconds. Mango able to get the move done on Fight Me Now bot. As the Red Bull now up into 6th. And I think certainly a good race for Mango considering the conditions. He needs the box to get disqualified. Not in wet conditions. It's only in dry conditions that you have to make that pit stop. As that is the real-life rule. And even still, I know as an admin team, we would reverse that decision if it were not the case, or if it was the case that he would get disqualified in-game when he crosses the line at the end of the race. He'd still get that finishing position restored, but 2 laps to go. Kaname up to the back of B-Tom. I assume this will be just about a formality here. And there's Kaname already looking to the inside. Of course, B-Tom on that same set of tires from the start of this race. You see Kaname all over the back of him. Is he going to try and get it done early? No, he'll hold back for the time being. See, again, you can see that track continuing to dry out. B-Tom, I think, going to try to do everything to just try to hold him up, try and compromise his exit. Kaname looking to make that move done, not going to do it
through turn 5. Is he going to get it, though, into turn 6? Of course, going to have the stronger exit here. Both drivers going to the inside of the track. B-Tom going to have that wetter line, going to give him the squeeze, going to try to be brave here. Here comes Kaname around the outside, going to be side by side on the penultimate lap here. B-Tom somehow managing to keep Kaname behind. Kaname, though, going to try to keep it super tight to the inside. B-Tom going to continue to give him the squeeze, and B-Tom again continues to hold on. So now we're going to run into Cops. Kaname, though, going to go early to the inside. So B-Tom not going to get that chance to cool his tires down. Just you can see how much more grip Kaname has in that Alpine. Going to go to the grass, going to try to sneak it down the inside through the first part of Maggots. Again, you can see Kaname trying to find that way through, putting all of the pressure here on B-Tom. As again, just trying to get that move done. Has B-Tom just managed to hold on just enough, though? And keep in mind, Wessel is there in the background. You can see the Haas there. 3.5 seconds back. B-Tom defends aggressively to the inside. He'll squeeze Kaname back to the outside. Kaname into the back of him. He'll try to sneak it up the inside. Maybe a little bit of contact between the Alpine and the Aston Martin. Kaname again going to go to the outside. You can see him all over the gearbox. It's going to be side by side here. B-Tom tries to be braver on the brakes. Can Kaname get the move done as we head through the final couple of quarters and onto the final lap? Still side by side, and B-Tom keeps it there. He somehow manages to hold on to this tire. Can the Aston Martin get it done? Contact, though, between the Alpine and the Aston. They'll stay side by side through the first couple of corners. Into the braking zone here at turn number 3. Has Kaname finally gotten it done? Maybe. B-Tom, though, looking for the switchback and trying to get a better exit here. B-Tom trying to sneak it down the inside. Going to keep it side by side. A load of wheel spin there, though. And that is Kaname finally up into the lead of this race. Wessel, though, in the background and closing very quickly. Remember, the Haas's tires are newer, so Wessel on a very good pace here. Does he have enough time? Does he have enough resources to potentially try and go after Kaname? He's going to have to make up a load of time and find a way past B-Tom. You can see defending like an absolute lion there. He'll take an offensive line into Cops. You can see the Haas looking to make a move to the inside, and there's contact, and B-Tom goes round. Contact between Wessel and B-Tom there, as I think Wessel just got a nose to the inside, and I don't know if that was lag contact or what happened there, but B-Tom goes around. He's now got massive front wing damage, and so Rumpo going to be looking to chase him down. The gap now 4.5 tenths from him. And so we'll come through the final couple of corners. We'll definitely keep an eye on that gap from B-Tom out in front, as everybody going to be trying to chase him down. But Kaname managing to get it done here, as Kaname going to come around the final corner, and it'll be 3 winners in 3 races here in Group 1 as Kaname wins a very wet British Grand Prix. Wessel comes home to finish second. B-Tom looking to hold on. He's just got to do it for a couple of more corners. Has he managed to hold on to those tires? Here comes Rumpo. Can Rumpo get a move done at the line? He will not! By 100th of a second, B-Tom holds on. It'll be MacT in 5th, Mango in 6th, Find Me Nowbot in 7th. Kiziel going to come across the line. He will finish 8th. Tom will finish up the race in 9th. Jordan going to try to hunt him down and finish 10th. But congratulations to Kaname. I think driver of the day, though, has to go to B-Tom for still managing to come home in 3rd, even after that incident. But, very tight all the way to the line there. But B-Tom, an absolute tire whisperer, 99% on that rear left tire. Just went completely after it in that one. But Alpine taking their 2nd win of the season. As it's week, it is Kaname's honors. He is the race winner. Fight Me Nowbot gets driver of the day. But I'll be completely honest, I still think that might go to B-Tom for still managing to come home in 3rd. Mango, of course, picks up the bonus point for fast lap, and we'll take a look at those overall results. So it's Kaname walking away with 25 points, Wessel with 18, of course, B-Tom, Rumpo, MacT, Mango, Fight Me Nowbot, Kiziel, who will get 4 points, plus the bonus point for qualifying. Tom and Jordan round out your point scores. And for myself, especially considering this race was so chaotic, so many DNFs, I'm going to make sure to get everybody in there. But yeah, definitely a very eventful one. Definitely an interesting one to come down to the wire. Of course, we got Group 2 and Group 3 tomorrow, which should be some more very tight racing. Definitely be sure to tune in next weekend for Round 4 at Suzuka as we head to Japan. So again, should be a very interesting race there. So we head to another classic Formula One. So of course, I've been vacant. Certainly hope you've enjoyed this one and hope you'll tune in tomorrow for Group 2 and Group 3 action. And until next time, we will see you later. Of course, congratulations to Kaname, Wessel, and Beatom. And have a good one, everybody.